Brennan. I'm the Director of Communications of the Southwest LHIN. Very pleased to be with you in this beautiful room. Today is INR Day. Who knew? A unique occasion to educate me, especially, and you about the world of information and referral. Full disclosure, I'm not an INR professional, but I'm the husband of an INR expert. My wife, Christina, she earned her master's in library sciences from McGill, and she's been in INR in both physical libraries and online world of medicine for about a quarter century. I shouldn't say that. Now you know how old she is. Enough about me. Our keynote speaker today is Harriet Ekperigan, Senior Business Lead at OTN, who's here to share what she's learned from working on www.bigwhitewall.ca. Fun fact, out of all the 14 LHINs, the Southwest LHIN is generating the highest number of psychotherapy referrals from bigwhitewall.ca. We're thrilled that people are seeing the benefits of technology and self-care. Also with us is Nora Kuzokria, the Southwest Community Engagement Team Lead at the Healthline, who will demonstrate how the Healthline is a one-stop shop for information and referral. And I'd like to introduce our other esteemed panelists. We have Kathy McLandris from the London Public Library, Kirsty Cheese, right there, from Child Reach Family Centres London, which helps parents help their children reach their full potential. My colleague Vicky Elderhorse from the Southwest LHIN, a care coordinator who acts as a liaison between patients and healthcare providers to ensure patients receive optimal care. And then finally, Karna Trentman, qui parle français aussi, from Addiction Services of Thames Valley, who often helps patients find the wraparound services they need, like housing or recovery support. I just would like to say that after the speakers and panelists have shared everything they know, you can stick around for 20 minutes to pick their brains, learn a few tricks, and enjoy a snack, I believe. So with that, I'd like to pass the microphone to our keynote speaker, Harriet. Well, actually, you don't need it, yeah.
AV Club here. There we go. I can get that set.
Thank you.
And just advance yours.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here this afternoon. I'm going to start off with a video. And some of you may not have seen our ad campaign for Big White Wall. So I'll start off with a video, and that usually helps to put some context to the name, Big White Wall. And hopefully you get the idea of where the name comes from. Technology works, yes. So I worked as a nurse therapist for about 4 years at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, from 2002 to 2004, 2006. I had a patient called Sam. He was 17 years old, and Sam was struggling with his sexuality. He was coming out as a gay young man. It was the end of high school, there was the school dance, and he was really struggling as to how he was going to go to the school dance with a girl when he doesn't really want to. And his family were very religious, so there was no way in hell he was going to come out to his family. His brother was quite homophobic, actually. And Sam would come to see me. He'd have dark glasses on, a hat, and a hood into the hospital. And the reason he did this was because he didn't want anybody to know that he was receiving services, especially not from the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. And I said to him one day, what would you do if you saw somebody that knew you? And he said, I would tell them I'm coming to visit somebody that's here. In 2006, I left CAMH and went on to do further education. And about a month afterwards, I got a call from the psychiatrist that I was working with my colleague. And he told me that Sam had taken his life. Sam did not have anybody else to share his pain with other than myself and the psychiatrist. And when I look back now, if we had a solution like Big White Wall back then, I really feel that that would have been the best place, at least for him to start to get his emotions out and start to talk about his feelings and start to receive the support he needed while continuing to be anonymous. That's what Big White Wall can do for people. Big White Wall is a space that you can go anonymously and share about what you feel or what you're thinking without having to talk about who you are. Because at the end of the day, what matters is how you feel and how you get support for that without having to talk about who you are. I don't need to know who you are for me to have some empathy, for me to be able to tell you how I dealt with that situation. And that's one of the things that keeps me motivated in sharing and bringing awareness about Big White Wall to the people of Ontario. In terms of mental health facts, we know that in any given year, 1 in 5 people in Ontario, actually in Canada, will experience a mental health difficulty. By the time that we all reach age 40, at least 1 in 2 would have had a mental health breakdown or experience. Individuals between the age of 15 to 24, so individuals in that, in Sam's age range, are more likely to need help for their emotional needs. And research shows that mild to moderate depression, if you get help early and not by medication, but by psychotherapy, talk therapy, there's actually high hopes of you actually doing better. However, long wait lists for talk therapy actually means that people end up going to the severe end and needed more medication than, to kind of help them to recover, compared to if they had received help earlier on by way of talk therapy and not have to end up having these severe symptoms. So what is Big White Wall? Big White Wall is an 24/7 anonymous online support for mild to moderate depression, anxiety, and other mental health related conditions. It is available free of charge to all of Ontarians. And one of the neat things about Big White Wall, unlike other apps, is that it's moderated 24/7 by trained counselors. These trained counselors are not your typical nurse, social worker. They're not regulated health professionals, but they do have at least a master's degree in a health-related field and 1 year minimum in counseling. So they are trained. It's, like I said, it's free to all of Ontarians, and it's a secure space that people can go and talk about their issues without having to worry about being identified. So what can members do on Big White Wall? There are a variety of things that members can do. This is a snapshot of a talkabout. So a talkabout is similar to a blog. So you can go on and you can post thoughts, you can share your feelings, and you can get help from other people. One of the things that was quite interesting to me when we first started doing Big White Wall was that we thought that if I am a young man like Sam that was struggling with my sexuality, and I went on Big White Wall and said, struggling with my sexuality, need help from other people that have gone through this, then I would get other people saying to me, you know, I went through this as well. But one of the neat things was that help and support was coming from the most unlikely places. So in that example, which was actually a real example, not in Sam's case, but in another person's case, a parent actually responded. And the parent said, if I was your parent, if I was your mum and dad, this is how I would handle it. And actually coach that person to actually coming out to their parent. And it was just, it was kind of a phenomenon on Big White Wall. It was something that was so unexpected. There was another example of a young man that had been in a car accident, and as a result, his friend had died. And he was on Big White Wall expressing himself, and he was thinking he would get other people that had gone through, you know, loss of a friend or family member. And the person that actually reached out to him was a police officer. And that police officer, because he was also struggling with some of the legalities of things, because he was going through kind of, was this intentional, was it not, was he going to be tried, was he not going to be tried? And the police officer actually responded to his post and provided him with support that he needed, and it was from the most unlikely place. So Big White Wall, there are hundreds and thousands of people that have all sorts of experiences that they can share and provide support to people that way. So that's what Talk About is. Talk About is a space where you go and you post your thought or feeling and you get support from other people. You see there it says recent and all talkabouts. That's for everything that's currently going on. So you can post anything on there, you can review anything on there, and you can decide to respond if you want. Or a lot of people just review, and that in itself is therapeutic. And my group Talkabouts is where you can actually pull the various people into a group. So the other day I was doing a demo, and there was a father that said, I love my family, I love my wife and my kids, but I really don't like them right now. And that makes me feel awful. And I thought, I feel like that most of the time. But that's another story. And he said, I really don't like my kids, and that makes me feel really awful. And other people started responding and said, we feel like that most days. And in that kind of situation, he can actually decide to pull a few people into a group Talkabout, continue the conversation anonymously, but he knows that he's in that group of people that are like-minded and they have the same thing in common. In my personal Talkabout, he could have decided that he wants to pull one other person that he found their support the most appropriate or most emotive to him, and pull that person into a personal Talkabout and continue that conversation with them. My watch Talkabouts are for those things that I want to flag. So in my demo account, I have flagged watch Talkabouts that I can use for demonstration. But regardless of whether you're in a recent Talkabout, a group Talkabout, or a personal Talkabout, all the time it's being monitored by a trained counselor. Now, I often get asked the question, what if somebody was to post something that's concerning? So someone says, I've had enough of my life, I just want to die. A couple of things would happen there. The other thing about Big White Wall is that behind the scene is a computer algorithm that picks up keywords. So for example, die would be a word that would be picked up and immediately flagged to a wall guide, who are the trained counselors. And the wall guide would look at it and look at the context of the post. And if they're concerned about what that post is, they would engage that person in a personal Talkabout. Personal Talkabout between a member and a wall guide is not visible by any other member. But what the wall guides would do to reassure the other members that they're doing something about it is to say, we hear you, well done for putting it out there how you feel. That must have been, that takes a lot. Now we're going to engage you in a Talkabout, in a personal Talkabout. And they would conduct a risk assessment. All of the wall guides are trained in de-escalating risk. If they felt that this person needed immediate help, they would provide them with a local contact number, so that that person could get local help. There isn't a situation where they could break the glass, because even the members themselves are anonymous to the wall guides. So it's a space where it's truly, truly anonymous, and that gives, I'll show you some stats in a bit, that gives people the freedom to really be able to express themselves. So that's all about Talkabouts. What else can you do on Big White Wall? You can use bricks. So bricks is a form of art therapy. Research shows that art therapy is therapeutic and can also be very beneficial to people struggling with depressive and anxiety symptoms. So each of those rectangles you see represents a brick on the wall. So that's a play on the name, again, Big White Wall. You can either upload an image that represents how you feel or what you're thinking, or you can use the tools available to actually draw out an image. And when you do that, other members see your post and they can comment on that post. So there are some really, really painful looking bricks out there. And members can post and say, this looks really painful. Do you want to talk about it? Tell me more about what this bricks represents. And there's a lot of validation that goes on Big White Wall. So the first thing you'd usually see is someone says, we hear you, or well done for sharing. And just that in itself can be so heartwarming. My colleague Alana actually sent me something yesterday. 2 days ago, somebody had sent an email into the Big White Wall inbox and said, for the first time in my life, I actually feel that I'm being heard. And that is very powerful. And that is what Big White Wall is all about, being heard. So that's what BRICS is. Guided support. So members can also take online courses, all free, all founded on cognitive behavior therapy, which is a best practice, golden standard for depression, anxiety symptoms. And they can take lots of different courses. We usually advise that you take 1 or 2 at a time because they can be quite overwhelming, and we want to make sure that people are successful. The courses range between 2 and 6 weeks depending on the topic. You can see there some of them: cutting down on your drinking, eating and weight loss, managing stress and anxiety. Managing stress and anxiety and depression, managing your depression, are the 2 most popular. So I think for October, we had 700 people sign up for courses, and I think about 70% of those went towards anxiety and depression. But there are other courses that you can take. They're all asynchronous, and each week you get a different, like a module. Each week you get a module to work through around depression, anxiety, or any other course that you're taking. The last offering has 2 parts. So the first part is, you see here it says take a test, view all tests, and that's to help members to monitor how they're doing. So if you were to click on take a test, you would see a series of different types of tests come up. So depression, anxiety, cutting down on your drinking, PTSD, OCD, and all of those help members to actually track how well they're doing. Because one of the things when you're receiving therapy is that you want to see like an upward trend, that you're actually doing well. And Big White Wall does a very good job at providing you with a graph that shows how well you're doing. On the other hand, it could be an indication that you're not doing well, that you're actually sliding backwards. And in that kind of a situation, the wall guys will actually intervene with that member in a personal talk about, just to see what's going on with them that's causing them to go backwards in their symptoms, that's causing a worsening of their symptoms as opposed to a betterment of their symptoms. The other thing you can do on useful stuff is the resource library. So the resource library has hundreds of articles that have been taken and broken down into practical steps. So there's one that I like to use both personally and for a demo, is called Keeping the Stress Away. So it takes best practice articles and puts them into practical form. So it's actually in step format. So step 1, find a space that's conducive to what you're going to do. Step 2, do this. Step 3, so it kind of helps the members, it walks the members through steps to get them to where they need to be. So that's useful stuff. I also find that the useful stuff is a good resource for family members and caregivers that are struggling to, how do I care for a loved one that's going through depression, anxiety, or other related condition? Or what does depression even mean? What does anxiety mean? Are they really depressed, or are they just lazy and don't want to get up in the morning? So the resources and the useful stuff actually helps caregivers as well to better understand the conditions that their loved ones are going through. So does it work? I've given you all this spiel. Does it actually work? Is it real, or am I just kind of blowing smoke up your you-know-what? The answer is yes, it does. So before we actually launched Big White Wall in Ontario, I started doing this in 2016. We actually did a research study, and we recruited 700 participants from Ontario Shores Mental Health Centre, Lakeridge Health Hospital, and Women's College Hospital. And what we did was we had 2 streams. So for 50% of the people got big white wall, and 50% of the people got treatment as usual. So whatever that was, if it was medication you were taking, if you were seeing a therapist, whatever it was, you continued the way you were going. And what we found from the research was that compared to those people that were not getting big white wall, that did not get big white wall, there was actually a reduction in the symptoms of depression and anxiety for those people that were using big white wall. And it may have been big white wall alone or big white wall in conjunction with medication or therapy or something else. But what we found was that there was actually a decrease. And there was an increased perceived ability to self-manage and regulate your emotions and regulate your symptoms. And that's one of the reasons why we felt we needed to bring big white wall to the rest of Ontarians. I like this slide because it shows you what members are actually saying about what they, about their experience using big white wall. So 70% of people, of members using big white wall, saw an improvement in at least one aspect of their mental health well-being. So like any other intervention, big white wall is not the gold standard. I'm not going to stand here and say it's going to solve everybody's problem. Like medication, like talk therapy, it works for some people, it doesn't work for others. But for those people that actually use big white wall and it works for, 70% of them said it reduced at least one aspect of their well-being. 1 in 2 people said they reported an issue for the first time. And this included people who were actually seeing therapists. And one of the things that they say is that, yes, I have a good relationship with my therapist, but I always feel like I have to hold something back because at the end of the day, we're all humans. And if I divulge something to my therapist, they might start looking at me in a different light. So in a space where I can feel totally anonymous, I feel more comfortable sharing that and I can get the help and support that I need. 51% of clients said that using big white wall actually helped them to return to work sooner. So another statistic that's not up here is that 35% of people that were using big white wall said they had time off work due to their emotional needs. And of those, 51% said they actually went back to work sooner compared to previous times when they had time off work due to their emotional needs. So I think that is an indication that the platform does work. So what kinds of people use big white wall? I have a couple of testimonials, and they're very different, and they indicate the diversity of the types of people that use big white wall. So on the right, we have a member that said even though they have a therapist, they know that their therapist can't be there for them 24/7. And big white wall is a space where they can go and express themselves any time of day or night without having to ruminate on their negative thoughts or waiting a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks to see their therapist. And on the left is somebody that said they'd not talked to anybody about how they're feeling. And in fact, they were actually starting to scare themselves with the negative thoughts that they were having. And they heard about big white wall, they accessed big white wall, and they started to realize that they're not the only one. They're not quote unquote crazy, and this happens to a lot of people. But with support and help, they can actually get over it. And they actually made a last post saying, thanking the other members, saying that they felt that they had moved away from the edge. And Big White Wall is a resource that they can use anytime if ever they needed to. So that just gives you an idea of the types of people that use Big White Wall. So who can access Big White Wall? Big White Wall is for 16 years of older with mild to moderate depression and anxiety and other related conditions. So you see in the example I talked about abuse or eating and other things like that. Self-referral, so there's no clinician referral required, which is huge. Low risk of suicidal ideations or self-harm. So it's not a crisis service. Big White Wall is not a crisis service, it's a support community. However, if there was a situation where somebody was having severe suicidal thoughts, then we know that the wall guides are there to kind of help to guide them and steer them. Low, basic level of English literacy and comprehension. Now, I know that I'll probably get lynched because I'm talking in an area where it's very bilingual. So I'd like to let you know that we are starting to look at ways of how we can bring Big White Wall in French. It's not going to be easy. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy because we looked at some lessons learned from the States where they had Big White Wall both in English and in Spanish. And the Spanish version was not successful. And I don't want to make that mistake that they did. One of the things that they did was open up the Spanish version with the hope that they were going to have hundreds of Spanish people register straight away and be able to support. But the problem is, when you only have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people, you don't have that richness of experience to be able to support each other. So right now I'm looking at how do we make Big White Wall available in a way that's still meaningful and effective for people that are French speaking, but without failing. So it's a bit of a challenge and a bit of a balancing game, but the hope is that next fiscal we can start to look at how we do some of those things. Access to phone or internet, with a computer with internet. So members can actually use Big White Wall in the local library. If they don't have a phone or an internet at home, they can access Big White Wall in the library. The only downside of that is that they only have access to it when the library is open. Right? It's a good tool to support clinicians, counselors, resources for people that are, to provide additional support to their clients. It's been used as a bridge for wait time. So when we did the research with Ontario Shores, they actually used it as a bridge for wait times. When I went into Ontario Shores, when we were planning out the pilot, I wanted to get an idea of how long people were waiting for services. And I thought, you know, I worked at CAMH, but that was a long time ago, and we had people waiting, you know, up to 6 months. And I found that there were people, depending on the program, the PTSD was the longest wait times. There were people that were waiting 2, 3, 4 years. And that just breaks my heart, because anything can happen within that time. So they actually used Big White Wall as a bridge for wait times, as something to give to people while they wait for face-to-face therapy. Clients looking for after-hours mental health support from a non-judgmental anonymous community. What I've also seen on Big White Wall are people that are coming onto Big White Wall and saying, I've just been diagnosed with depression and I don't know what to do or where to start, or what do I do? And lots of support from other people that have been through the same thing, just offering endless advice on, you know, what they did and some of the mindfulness that they've done, and outside of, you know, pharmacology and medication, just little things that we can do every day to keep us going and to keep our moods up. So how are we doing in Ontario? We launched in Ontario April 4th. And we started off with a couple of LINs, and then we kind of, you can see some of the compelling events. So in April, we had our .ca launch, marketing materials were developed, and we were kind of making progress, but we were also planning in the back end the ad campaign that you just saw. So in between August and September, we had our highest number of people register on Big White Wall. We had 735 people, and that was also because we had launched our university and college campaign. We were actually going to universities and colleges on their orientation days and saying, this is what Big White Wall is. And I can't even tell you the amount of people, and the ones that I went to, that were students that were saying, I think I'll need this today. There was a young girl that she was just catatonic, she couldn't move. She was just overcome with anxiety and panic attack at one event I was at, and she just couldn't move. And as God would have it, it happened right on our table. And we were able to kind of get her to the help that she needed, but that's just one student. So we made it our goal to reach as many students as possible, and between August and September, we went to 31 colleges and university orientation days. So we launched our ad campaign October 1, and you can see what happened right after we launched. We had a 600% increase in registrations on Big White Wall. And that was October, and in November we thought, okay, you know, with the hype of the ad campaign, things will calm down. The first week of November, we had 1,200 registrations on Big White Wall. And we count registrations, there are two different ways we count. What I'm interested in are the people that actually go on to Big White Wall, register, activate, and then use it. We have the registration, who are the people that are kind of curious as to, I wonder what this is about, but never do anything else. But then what I'm interested in is making sure that people are actually using the solution. So the numbers I give you are for those members. Okay. And that's really what Big White Wall is. I'd like to do an exercise, if that's okay with everybody. Sometimes I do this at the beginning, sometimes I do this at the end. And if you don't feel comfortable, that's okay. But I'd like to ask everybody to close your eyes. Don't worry, I'm not going to touch you. And like I said, if you don't feel comfortable, don't participate. Everything that happens here is confidential to me. If you have ever felt so down, depressed, sad, that you just felt that you're never going to get out of this, I'd like you to raise your right hand. Keep it up. And if you have ever felt so stressed about a situation that you just felt, I'm going to fail, I'd like you to put your other hand up. Now, if you, keep your hands up, please. Now, if you feel comfortable with other people seeing your hand up, leave it up. But if you don't feel comfortable, I'd like to ask you to put your hand down now. Okay. Now I'd like to ask the rest of you to put your hand down. Thank you. The rationale or the purpose of that exercise is that whenever I do this, there's usually about 70% of the room that will put at least one hand up. And when I say, if you don't feel comfortable, other people seeing you put your hand down, at least 40% of the people put their hand down. And that's just an indication of why we need a solution like Big White Wall. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harriet. That was really affecting, very powerful. That was quite an impressive presentation, and I think we're all really, a lot of people were just excited as soon as I said we were having this presentation on Big White Wall. Like, I said it at one room and people literally said, oh, and they all sat up and they said, I'm going to register. So does anyone have any questions for Harriet, or any questions coming in online? Yes, Kathy has a question.
What information do people give when they register?
Good question. So when you register with a postal code. And that's only because Big White Wall is paid for by the government of Ontario. We want to make sure that it's only available to Ontarians. So you register with a postal code. You give your gender, your age, and your age is to make sure that you're 16 and over. Your gender, employment status, ethnicity, and that's it. And we use that information to enhance our marketing campaign. So that if we see, I know that when we did the pilot, we saw that the most people, I think it was like 80% of people were white females between the age of 24 to 34. And I was like, well, I know a lot of people that are not white females between that age range that's struggling. So we made sure that our collateral materials were more inclusive of other generations and demographics.
How was the age chosen? Like, what was the determinant of 16 and over, as opposed to younger?
Yeah.
We can see depression in younger.
Yes, yes. So when we procured Big White Wall from the UK, they only have 16 and over. And I think that the age was, when in speaking with our legal, it was determined that typically anything under the age of 16, and there is a crisis or there is a situation where somebody discloses, then we would have to go through kind of breaking the glass to report that. And that's not something that we wanted to be a part of this, so it's only available to 16 and over.
I think it's firstly wonderful that you have this area for people to, and a resource, but I'm concerned about the idea of post-humanism and humanism in general, and I'm wondering what is the success rate for bridging this into human contact and actually face-to-faces? And I know you talk about having the face-to-face, but do you also collect data on how you can bring these people into a circle where there's real people as well as the internet?
Yeah, so if in a situation where a wall guide has interacted with somebody that needed additional support, they actually put that person on a watch list. So there's data to show and to make sure that that person continues to be safe and that they receive the support that they need.
And just in general, encouraging not just the ones that have been red flagged, but just people in general. Do you get comments about referring them to human contact, like going for a coffee, or?
So between the members?
Yeah.
No.
Guide each other towards actually having human contact
With each other? No, with each other, no.
Just with anyone, not just like with friend, do they say ghost?
Yes, yes, definitely they do that. They do that. So a lot of the, actually a lot of the advice that you will see from other peers includes get out there, go for a walk, talk to other people. Is there anybody that you trust that you can talk to? So there's a lot of that happens, yes. Both from peers, which are other members, and the war guides as well. Yes, yeah.
Community supports for them too, besides just talking, like where the nearest places are, or
Yes.
even funding if possible?
So did you say funding?
Yeah, like even because, you know, obviously most help costs money.
Yes, so the wall guides are all equipped with local resources, and those resources are broken down into postal codes, so LINs. And they do provide them with, provide members with information. The main priority is to ensure that that person is safe. So the main goal is to provide them with a local crisis center that can deal with them face to face. But there are other resources that can be provided, yes.
We had one online question come in, and I'll get to Michelle. And the question is, wondering what the average age of demographic of use is.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So prior to October, when our registration shut up, we were seeing the highest range was 16 to 24. When we launched our campaign for the month of October, we actually saw a shift, and it was 24 to 34. So we're trending towards having it. What I would like to see is that kind of 24 to 44, because I think that would be an indication of people that are more likely to see the ad campaign and to act on it. So I'm really eager to see what kind of our next quarterly report will look like, because I think it's going to be very different from what we've been seeing.
I'm just curious about the tests that you mentioned. What sort of questions would someone answer on something like that?
Good question. So all of the tests are actually standardized measurement tests. So for example, with the depression test, for example, is a shortened form of the personal health questionnaire, which is the PHQ-9, which is a standard questionnaire that's used by most clinical people in most clinical space that measures depression. And some of the questions include, I won't use that one as an example because I can't think of one of the questions, but I'll use an example of the social isolation. So there's a social isolation scale, and one of the questions it would ask something like, do you have somebody that you can call at any time if you're feeling down? Or how many times do you go out in a week? Who do you usually go out on your own? If you had the opportunity to go out or stay in, what would you choose? So those are the kinds of questions that it would typically ask. Yeah. Hi.
Okay, I think we'll take one more here.
So I will admit to actually having not seen your marketing campaign. So I'm wondering what your marketing campaign included and where you advertise.
Okay. So recognizing that we're in a space where we have limited funds, we have tried to look at the most cost-effective or efficient way of promoting. And so we're heavily marketing in the social media. We have chosen at this time not to do any TV spots, because for one TV spot, what it costs us for one TV ad is equivalent to what it costs us for 8 weeks of social media campaign. So we advertise on Facebook, on Google. So if you were to type Big White Wall, if you were to type mental health support, you'd see us as one of the paid advertising. Big White Wall is one of the paid advertising. And we've also started looking at Instagram. But most recently, we actually, we've been connecting with some people because hoping that we can use, we could sell this as a public service announcement. And if we're successful in that, then we wouldn't have to pay. And channels like Rogers and Bell can actually promote this for free, which would be great. So we're exploring that right now. Can we promote? Yes, please. tweet as much as you can. So for Mental Illness Awareness Week, which was October 1 to 7th, we're promoting. We're also in partnership with Bell Let's Talk. So they've been promoting for us, and they'll continue to do so. And we're having discussions with them as well as how we plug this into the Bell Let's Talk Day in January.
And here it's brought in some materials as
Yes,
well that
handouts,
people can
pamphlets.
grab
Sorry,
on the way
I didn't really
out.
think. I could have brought you some really not so cool pens, but similar to the ones over there. So you could take those ones and just scratch out the name and put big white wall on them, and you'll be okay. Sorry, whoever brought those in. Yeah.
Quick question
Yes.
about, is there a way we can put a link on our Facebook page?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have a social media toolkit that has everything that you need. So you can have, you can tweet the campaign, you can have it as part of your signature. There are banners we have as well. If you have one of those digi-screens in your weight rooms, we have those that you can have on there. We have posters. I'm going to leave some business cards in the back as well, so that if anybody would like any leaflets or wallet cards or anything, just let me know and we can have those mailed out to you.
Thank you.
Home support and get a resource link. Like, could we add you on our resource link? Like, get your logo and how? So just take the business card and contact it. All right.
Short question. Is it an app or a website?
It's a website. Yeah, it's a website. It was determined by our privacy that it was safer to have a website than an app at this time.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Harriet.
you.
I think I speak for everyone when I say that was really, really great.
Thank you.
so much. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I think Kyle will steal your microphone there, and Harriet does have to hit the road to beat the traffic, which we totally understand. So thank you so much for coming. All right, slight technical break here while I switch to a different. Come back. Where's that? There's that. There's that. Yes, rhubarb, rhubarb. Talk amongst yourselves while we get this set. Okay, so as Dan mentioned at the beginning, I'm Nora Kuzakrea, and I'm the Southwest Regional Community Engagement Team Lead. That sounds right, for the healthline.ca in our region. So some of you may have sat through presentations like this already. Some of you, it may be new to you. I'm going to assume that there's at least maybe a passing knowledge of what the Healthline is, because we sent out the invitations and that's probably where you heard about this event. But I am just going to talk to you a little bit about the Healthline and how it is a source of information. It is a place you can share your information. It is a place you can find information that you can share with other people. And I think, you know, the popularity of this event and the number of people who signed up right away to join really speaks to the fact that there is a need out there for people. You all want to know what's out there so you can help people. So, the healthline.ca. We are Ontario's digital health and community information network. So last year we had over 7 million visits to our sites, over 16 million page views, and our database right now contains over 45,000 service and program records. We're a single point of access for health and community services across Ontario. So a little brief history lesson is that the Healthline started here in London, supporting what was at the time the London Middlesex CCAC. CCACs are now Lynn Home and Community Care, as we all know, but at the time we were supporting the London CCAC, and that was born of the major health service providers in the region, including LHSC and MLHU and CCAC itself, saying, we need one source of information, one list that is reputable and that we can feel confident that when we go to this list to find information about services, we are giving people good information. And the Healthline was born, and it was good, and we went happily on our way. And then the CCACs changed their boundaries slightly, and we became the Southwest Healthline. So we were London, Middlesex, Elgin, Huron, Perth, Oxford, a little bit of Norfolk, Grey Bruce. And it was good, and we continued on our way. And in about 2011, 2012, all of the CCACs throughout the province, they realized that everybody was doing their own thing in their own region, collecting their own list. They had their own bucket of data. Everybody was doing it a little differently, and nobody was really talking to each other. And they said, let's literally get everyone on the same page. And the page that they chose was the Healthline. So they selected that to be the database that everybody would collect and share information in. So the Healthline became this provincial portal that you come to, and then you can find information about any region in the province. So we can come here and say, oh yes, we're in the Southwest. I recognize the part of the arrow where we're located, but if you were not sure what area you were in, you can just enter your city or postal code and it will drop you into the correct region for which you're looking for information. And I will point out that that can definitely come in handy when you are working with someone who is here in London and you're face-to-face with them or on the phone with them, but one of their issues or concerns that they have is a loved one that they're caring for long distance who lives in Cornwall or North Bay or Ottawa or anywhere else. So you can plug in that information and it will take you to the regional health line there, and you'll be able to look up local resources for them there. So we picked number 2, and we knew that that's where we wanted to go, and here we are at the southwesthealthline.ca, which has lots of great information. Let's talk about the best ways to find the information quickly and the information that's going to be relevant to your needs. So we've got the Google search tool up at the top. If you know pretty specifically what you're looking for, if you're looking for Alzheimer's Society Owen Sound, it works just like the Google search tool. You know, that's what you enter and it will take you to specific listings that are going to be helpful to you. If you're not quite sure what you're looking for, one of those, I'm speaking to this person, I think they're going to benefit from community supports, I'll know it when I see it. You know, you can explore one of the categories there, and that will help you sort of narrow down your search. We also have an alphabetical search down there at the bottom. If you're like, it's a place on Dundas, it starts with an N, I can't think of it, you can just search for it there. And we also have Find Services Near Me and Find Services Across Ontario. So Across Ontario is going to take you back to that provincial portal. Find Services Near Me is going to take you to a page that just comes up with our top 20, 25 services that people tend to search for. Pop in your postal code or community name, select the one you want, and it will take you where you need to be. So in this let's pretend scenario, let's pretend that I clicked on home and community supports because I wasn't quite sure what would help this person that I'm talking to, but I think I'll find some information there. So you come to the category where it shows you all sorts of great information that you may not have even thought about, right? You may not have thought of adaptive clothing being something that could help this person, or, you know, just a friendly visiting program, or in-home foot care, in-home dental services. There's a lot of great stuff. If I give everybody one piece of homework from this event, it's just go home and just start clicking and you will find a lot of great stuff. I guarantee you will be excited if you're a data nerd like myself and Kirsty. You will be excited about the kind of things you can find here because it really is quite something. So in this case, I saw the list that said meal delivery services, and I think that's definitely what I want to help this person connect with. So now we've got a list of all the meal delivery services in the Southwest. Comprehensive list right there, which is fantastic. However, I'm in London, so I don't really need to know what's happening in Owen Sound, although it's great to know that there is stuff happening out there. So we could click on one of those colored tabs at the top. So again, if you're talking to someone here, but they actually live in St. Thomas, you can click on the Elgin tab up there and find information. Or you can enter your postal code or community name, and it will show you the relevant local information. So in this case, I selected London and Middlesex. It brings me to the list there. Then up at the top, I can click map just to see exactly where the services are located, and it will bring me this picture here, in which case I know I'm in London, and the one in Strathroy isn't particularly relevant. So I'm going to click on the Meals on Wheels profile and see if that's a service that I want to recommend. So here's what you are going to find basically on any service profile that you click on in the Healthline. It's going to have the contact information. It's going to have a website, an email, an address. The physical location, you can look at that on a map. We're going to have information about the hours that it's available. They close at 2 in the summer. That's a pretty sweet gig. I would check that out if anyone's interested. When the summer hours come into effect, you know, the executives, the contacts there that you can talk to. And in the service description, that's where we're going to get a little more specific without promotional language, because we do have, you know, guidelines in terms of how we're formatting this information, and we're helping you compare apples to apples here. So this isn't where they can say, we have the greatest food and it's going to cure, you know, what ails you, and this is where you can find it. We're going to let you know hours of operation, special dates when things are available, and things like that. As you come down here, you're going to find really good specific information like the cost of the meals, the application process, the eligibility, all of that stuff is there. So you'll find out if people can self-refer to a service. You'll find out if they can just call or walk in, anything like that. So that's the basic stuff that you're going to find. But look at this here, all of these little other links that are under here, which we call child profiles, just because we have a hierarchical database. That's exciting stuff of information. So this is called the parent profile, and these little ones underneath are child profiles. But this is where you start to find interesting things. So you look at this and you say, yeah, daily meal program. That's what I would expect to see at Meals on Wheels. Oh, frozen meal service. You can get frozen meals delivered once a week, and they're set for the whole week. Didn't know that. Out for lunch bunch. I didn't know that they would collect people who are receiving Meals on Wheels and take everybody out for lunch. I didn't know that was a thing that was available. And Wheels for Wellness. Meals on Wheels has a transportation service. Hands up if you guys knew that. I did not know that. So that's pretty cool that they will take people to an appointment. They will take the caregiver with them if they want. The person just has to be able to get from the door to the appointment kind of thing. They'll wait until the appointment's done. They'll take you home. If you clicked on that, you'd see it costs $18 round trip plus parking. That's a pretty good deal. And I never would have known unless I started clicking around and seeing all of this information that's being collected in this database. So I'm looking at this profile. There's all sorts of exciting information there. I found out that they do a special delivery on Christmas Day, which is lovely. Look at all of this information over here as well, which sometimes one might ignore things on the side if you're used to being on something like Facebook maybe, where there's a lot of extra gobbledygook on the side. But this is where I want to point out that as people who have service profiles in the database, if you're an organization who has information already in the database, this is where you can share other information. So if there's news about your organization that you want to share, if there is an event coming up that you can enter into the events tool, if there is a video that you've prepared that you want to share with people, or documentation about, the transportation service, this is all available to you for free if you have a service profile on the Healthline. If you have a job posting, there aren't any job postings up there, but you can post a job for free on the Healthline if you have a service profile in the database. So it's where you can find information, and it's where you can share information. So definitely we want people to feel like they have some sort of ownership over their profile in the database, that you can modify, you can share extra things in addition to just what your service profile is. And you also have some ownership over updating it. So back here, you'll see up at the top where it says suggest an update. We have a mandate to update this information annually. So there are people whose job it is to pick up the phone and to email and to say, and many of you have probably received these emails where we say, are you still open from 9 to 5? Is this still where you're located? Are these still your services? So we're making sure that the information is up to date and accurate. If you have a service profile, you can take ownership of this as well. And if you know that in the summertime you say, Meals on Wheels does it, I'm going to close it too on Fridays as well, you can go in and submit an update and make that change so that we're giving people the most accurate and up-to-date information. If you go to Meals on Wheels on a Friday at 1 o'clock and the door is locked, you can go to the Healthline, suggest an update, and say, I think you guys need to look into this because they were closed at 1. That information comes to data editors at the Healthline. So it's not just going live onto the site. We're the gatekeepers of the information. We would follow up and make sure that, yes, they are, closing an extra hour earlier on Fridays. We would update that information. So it's a managed database, but everybody has sort of a stake in it, and we encourage people to feel like you can take an active part in keeping it up to date and accurate. So this is the screen that you would come to that has information about how to do the update, and just make sure you leave your name and just a little note about what the information is that you want us to change, and we will change it. So I looked at the Meals on Wheels profile. It was definitely what I wanted to share with that person. How could I share it? I could print it and hand it to him or her on the spot. I could email it to him or her, and if you were doing talking to someone on the phone, you could say, if you just give me your email address, I'll send you this information about a service that would be helpful to you. Or I could add it to the clipboard. What's the clipboard, you say? Well, hold on to your socks. So this is a place where you can collect different services, because I would be willing to bet that 9 times out of 10, when you're having a conversation with someone who is going to benefit from connecting with one service, there are probably other services that they would also benefit from, right? So they've come to you in your organization, in your capacity, whatever it is. You've given them all of the information you can about what you can offer them. and then you say, I think these other services could help as well. So we've added this to the clipboard, and you can see now the number 1 has popped up in the corner there, and it now says added to clipboard. So in this let's pretend scenario, I've gone back to the community support services, which this is kind of like a, you know, Amazon people who liked this category were also interested in community supports or other meal delivery services. So I've gone in there, I found a few other services, and when I'm done, I've gone to the little clipboard icon there up in the corner, clicked on it, which is kind of like checking out, and I come to this clipboard list. So I've created a personalized list of services that I can share with this person. I can print it off and I can give it to them right there, or I could email it to them. If you're emailing it to them, you can leave a little note in the comments box. I suggest leaving your contact information if you want to close the loop, because it will be an auto-generated email just coming from the health line. But if you say, here's what we were talking about, give me a call if you have any other questions, you can leave that there, and you can send that off to them. And the benefit of doing it this way is that when you send it to them, it's always got this live link back into the database. So if you send it to them today, but they don't look at it until 6 weeks from now, and in the meantime there have been updates or changes, when they go to it, they're going to see the most up-to-date information, right? So printing it off is fine. You know, print resources are good and people like to hold on to things, but it is kind of like driving the car off the lot. And once it's gone, you can't necessarily guarantee the value. So this is a really handy way to always connect people back in to the listing. Another way it can help you in the INR field is that you can bookmark a list for yourself. So if there was a bunch of services that you just regularly referred people to, they were your go-to 5 or 6 services that you always felt confident recommending, you can create a list. The list can hold up to 20 different services or events that you're sharing with someone, but if you bookmark that list, it will just save it in your browser. Every time you come to it, you could just call it long-term care home list Elgin or something, and it would always be there for you. So it would be however many you've added to that list. If you were talking to someone, access that list, added a few more services to save to share with them. Next time you went back in, it would just be that original list that you saved. Okay. Very handy way to share information. So that was a lot of information about finding services geographically, sort of in terms of where people are located and what's going to be helpful to them. We have also branched into organizing services according to the audiences and specific audiences, because when you think about the health line itself, and you know, even just Southwest Health Line, it's a big bucket of information. It's everything kind of cradle to grave that's all in there. And sometimes it's nice if there is a specific audience that is really only going to be interested in a specific kind of service, to streamline that a little bit and create websites that are going to be directed specifically to that audience. So sometimes we've done this just on our own. Other times we work with community partners who come to us and say, we'd like to create an online presence and we would like to connect into your service database. And so we build out programs like Caregiver Exchange is a site that we built, which is a province-wide site that supports caregivers. So we've just handpicked certain categories of information that are specifically going to be helpful to caregivers. And then we've built it out with a website where we've got original content, we've got videos where we went out and Paul, who's over here by the way, Paul Kavanaugh is the manager of the site. So he conducted interviews with caregivers in the region just on specific topics and created short little videos that can be shared there. And we've also got a forum now that's available on that website. So if caregivers are looking for other people to talk to about what they're going through, that's a great place to direct them. Because again, when you're performing information and referral for people, it could be, I'm stressed, and you could say, go to Big White Wall, and you could say, are you specifically stressed about, you know, this person for whom you're caring, and maybe you'll find some information on Caregiver Exchange. And just another example of another site that we've built out, Healthy Aging in Southwest Ontario, so lots of information about programs and services that are available, specifically focused on helping people stay healthy and stay home for as long as they can. That was very fast because I wanted to give Harriet lots of time. So I zipped through a lot of information there. We have pens, we have bookmarks, and I have left business cards back there as well. If anybody would like to follow up with me, I am more than happy to come out and do presentations to organizations to help people learn how to use the site effectively to find the information they need. So that's why I'm here, folks. Engagement, that's the name of the game. So I am more than happy to come out and talk to people. Does anyone have any questions about all of that information that I just presented very quickly to you? Yes, Kathy.
You didn't mention something I use a lot is the events, posting the events.
Yes, well, let's see. I didn't want to count on, you know, when you count on the actual internet working for you, sometimes it can turn against you. Let's see if I can get that over here. But we do have an events tool, which is very handy. Let's see if I might just have to swoop it over here. Now, this is going to be really tricky if I can manage this. So this is where people can enter support groups that might be going on, workshops that might be happening. You know, it could be multi-day workshops, it could be conferences, anything like that. And you can search in that little search bar if there's a specific topic that you're interested in. Again, if you wanted to sort of scoot around and see, you know, children and parenting, arthritis, bereavement, there's probably going to be a lot of caregiving, you know, workshops and support groups and things like that available. So, and as I did mention briefly, when you're adding things to the clipboard, events can be added there as well. Thank you for reminding me of that, Kathy. So yes, we do have the health news, the health events, and the health careers section. Health careers is a very popular area, I will say. And again, it is free for anybody who has a service profile to post a job on there. Are there any other questions? No, it's a lot, but you have homework. Your homework is go to the site and start clicking and see what cool things you can find. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks very much, Nora. So panelists, do you want to join me at the front so we can chat? Can I shut this now? Do you have a microphone, Kathy? So just as a reminder, you probably do remember, so we have Kathy McLandris from the London Public Library, Kirsty Cheese from Child Reach, Vicky Elderhorst from the Southwest LHIN, my colleague, and Karna Trentman from Addiction Services of Thames Valley. And I was hoping to start with Kathy, if that was okay. And I was going to ask, could you paint a picture of what INR looks like at the London Public Library? What does INR look like?
Well, as you know, libraries are about dispensing information, helping people find information. So it can look like anything from someone coming to the service desk and saying, you know, I heard about a program on the radio, can you help me find out about it? So we do, you know, do the searching. Refer, it could be that, could be, we have a program from a service provider. We have one upcoming with Alzheimer's Middlesex London. Can you, is this working? Mm-hmm. So from that program might become other questions that people have, and we keep up. Another thing we do is keep website lists of ongoing support services, so we can direct people for finding a job, health, careers, all that kind of thing. So we do that, and then we have a telefax service. I don't know if anyone knows about that, but it's a call-in information service, and they have access to so many databases, and they can look up information for you right on the phone, and they can connect you with the services you need. They can call the branch if someone wants to come in and pick up something at the branch. We have, of course, our book collections, but that's probably secondary to what people need when they need information right away. And there was something else I was going to say. Referrals. So we also try to keep current on what are the current services in the area, and we don't officially refer, but we can say, have you heard about this? Or okay. We also do we have prenatal classes, so we work with MLHU to dispense information to new parents, and we now have started with handing out information packages to people who might be in a caregiver situation, they need to know what supports are in there.
Okay.
In London, yeah.
That's plenty.
Yeah,
how
plenty.
about you, Vicky? What does INR look like at the Southwest Lynn?
Okay, as a care coordinator, INR is really very important. As you know, we get a lot of referrals from various resources in the community, and not always is it that the Southwest Lynn would provide the service in itself. So we have to be available with lots of information to be able to give to the patients to make sure that that their needs are met. So whether it's met through the Lynn, where I work as a care coordinator, or whether it's met through referral to a community resource, whether it be private pay or funded, whatever it is, so the patient receives the care required that has been requested. So information and resources very important to the job of a care coordinator as well in our service.
I'll ask the same question for everyone, so go ahead, Karna.
Okay.
Let's hear what you have to say.
So I work with addiction services, but also more broadly with mental health and addiction services, harm reduction services throughout the area. So I think what a lot of people, I guess, don't understand is how to access those types of services, because if they haven't had to access them before, their information may be based on watching intervention and American television, and the system in Ontario is quite different. So a lot of times people don't only need a list of resources, but they need information on how to navigate those resources, how they work. They need to know that they have a lot of options. So there's not just one door, there's multiple doors into services. And people will only go for mental health and addiction help if they're comfortable and trusting. So I think a lot of the work we do is to encourage people, to motivate them, and to say that no door is really the wrong door, and encourage them to reach out for help.
All right, thanks, Karna. And you, Kirsty?
Working with the family centers, 7 of them across London, the entire point of the family centers existing is to provide families with access to the information that they need so that they don't have to navigate the system on their own. We do this through having locations throughout London located in neighborhood schools, a very safe and comfortable place for families to come see us. We have community connectors working at each family center whose role is to build relationships with families, find out what their needs are, and help them find the services that they need. Making referrals, we do talk about that, sorry Nora, I'm going to take it, how it's like an open book test. You don't have to have all the answers, so we work together to ensure that we can find the answers for people.
That's a great answer. I have to admit, like when I first heard of INR, the first thing that came to my mind was the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service. Something very dry. So I was wondering if you guys could tell me why INR is nothing like the IRS. Tell us something surprising or touching about INR. And anyone can take a stab at it, or I'm going to choose someone. Karna?
I'm going to take a stab at it, and I'm going to confess that I worked at a helpline for 20 years, so I did INR a very long time, and I think really good INR goes way beyond, again, just giving a number for a service. It's a lot of listening, so if it's INR via like a helpline or a service like 211, it's listening to people, it's making them feel welcome when they call so they don't feel like they're bothering you, or so I think it's human engagement. We talked about the big white wall. All these things are kind of part of the same sort of issue where I do think people go online a lot for INR, but in the situation where they're calling, they probably need to hear a human voice and some understanding, and people don't have really clear-cut black and white situations. Often the situation people find themselves in are incredibly complicated and complex. So I think good INR listens attentively to everything the person is telling them, and really looks at not just giving one option, but a lot of options. So I'll that's.
I assume you have some good stories, Kathy, no, from the library?
Yes. I was going to say, one way we're different from the IRS is we don't want your money. So I think that's really important, though, because it's accessible to anybody, any strata, any culture. So that's one of our big things about INR and the library is that anyone can access our services. One story I do have is how they're connected is I was working at Central Library, and a woman came up and asked me for where to find a book on a shelf, and it was a book about parents talking to their children about coming out, and she started talking a little bit about it. She got quite emotional, and I said, you know what, I bet you there's some places we can help you find some support for this. So then we went to the desk and did that search. I'm sure I used the Healthline to do that. So that's how the human part of it is. It's not just handing out numbers, and it's just not handing out referrals. It's talking to people.
Great. Does anyone else want to tackle that one, or?
I could.
Yeah.
It really is very much a human connection. I think the INR is really about hearing somebody's story and responding to that. Sometimes it is just lending an ear, a listening ear. We might not always have the answer. We talk an awful lot amongst our community connectors about how we're not counselors, we're not therapists, but we are the person right in front of them. And our role really is to resource and refer them on, but we have this relationship. We do collect a lot of, and we share a lot of these impact stories, and I can tell you a number of times it has brought me to tears hearing some of the beautiful relationships that happen. So I think that is really a big play where it's very different from the IRS. You know,
I figured it was.
Rather than you cry because you are being contacted by the IRS.
It's where people trust you.
Yes.
They want they want to trust you, and therefore you need to give them applicable and accurate information, making sure that you can gain that trust, so they will contact again if they decide they need further information as well. I feel that that's a relationship that they need to have when they're calling to get their information, as opposed to getting inaccurate information and then feeling that someone didn't want to listen or help them. So INR is really important, and what you're giving out is very important.
Pardon me?
The information that you're giving is very important.
I'll change gears a little bit. Does it sometimes feel like being a detective when you're in INR, like trying to find out what people are asking, or recognizing what they're really trying to say? Is it like being a detective? Yeah.
Yeah, it can be. It can be a little bit of. Sometimes you kind of liken it to conducting an interview. You're trying to find out all the vital pieces of information, being mindful that you don't want to dig too hard, because this can be very sensitive.
Right.
But you want to find the right information to provide the right referral. It is
that
tricky.
a stimulating part of the job? Is that something you guys like about the job?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I feel like you're. You get the first question, and you can tell by the face if it's not quite answering what they're looking for, and then you kind of keep probing to find out what is the piece of information they're looking for. And if you do find it, it's like a eureka moment. Yeah.
It's like putting a puzzle together and fitting the pieces, taking all the information they give you and putting those pieces together, so you're not just focusing on one thing. Sometimes those things lead to others, and you need to go into other resources as well to help them to make sure they all connect.
Are the puzzles generally simple or complicated? Are they easy puzzles usually? Both?
Yeah.
Can be very in my job, everybody's job, it can be very complicated because it's figuring out what they're trying to say. Some people don't come right out and say exactly what it is they want, but your questions to them and their answers help you piece those together as well with the information that you've got available to you to help them with that.
And sometimes you're thinking that it's one little piece that you're trying to help them with, but as the conversation goes on, you find out a little bit more, and it expands, and that picture becomes a much bigger puzzle that you're trying to put together.
Okay. What about pressure? Do you guys feel pressure to know it all, to know everything? You mean you are the library, or you know, is there a lot of pressure to know everything?
I think part of it is admitting when you don't. So part of it is knowing when it's out of your scope and saying, I can't help you with this, but maybe this person can. So that's part of INR, is knowing your limits, and sometimes it's expectation. We used to call it expectation management. So don't give people false hopes. If there's long wait lists for services, you need to let them know that. So you have to give people, realistically prepare them for the services that they're going to get, or say that they cost something, or you know, and do it in a respectful and supportive way. But that's part of the job, is realistic expectations, I would say.
Okay.
Being upfront and honest.
Pardon me?
Being upfront and honest and telling the patient exactly what it is, not building their hopes. They call the number and find out it's not that. And not, my big thing was not to promise things of other companies that you don't know about. Make sure that they call them and ask them about them and bring that up. Because promising people things of other companies that may not be there again doesn't build a trust again in the patient to use your service, right? So again, you've got to be careful with what you do. You like to give a patient a positive, oh yeah, we can help you and we're going to do this, but if you can't, again, admitting that you can't and knowing what the other resources are for them to talk to help them through.
I imagine when you're dealing with sick people sometimes, right, Vicki? So emotions are running high. Is that must make it very challenging?
Can be at times. You just try to understand what's going on. And, you know, a lot of caregiver stress and burnout now. So there's a lot of things like that too.
Okay. Oh, there's a question. Oh, I'm not at the question stage.
I know that, like you said, there's a lot of pressure when people are waiting to put on wait lists and everything. Has Lynn ever considered maybe possibly to all the providers of support asking them to have like an immediate openings, so that you guys know, like we would send it in to you, if you know what I mean. We've hired extra staff, whatever. We've got this many of it, so it makes it easier for you even when referring services, that you know from this list of 50 care providers in that area, I've got 10 of them right now that say they have immediate openings.
You're speaking to me as a care coordinator? Oh, I'm sorry. We have, as far as, okay, I'm not quite getting into, you're saying if they can't get services, you're saying? And
well,
if there's
like
other...
A lot of people will say they've been on waiting list or waiting or hoping.
Right.
Why not have all the places that you refer to that you're using, if they're able to kind of send you that information to say we have immediate openings, to make it a little easier for you and those looking for services?
Okay, so our service contracts out to service providers, and we have certain ones. We don't just don't go to everyone, so that's the reason we have wait lists, as far as my understanding, right? So we can't, I just want to make sure I'm saying the right things, but so we have the wait list, obviously, so we can't, again, if they went to the other ones, it might involve private pay. We do it all through OHIP as well, right? So I'm not sure that would work in that situation because of the contracts that we have. We have to stick with the people that we have at this time. I'm sure there's lots of talk going on to see how we can make this better, because I know everybody wants to. Nobody wants to be on a wait list.
No.
And we understand that it does put pressure on a lot of people for that. However, I'm not sure what the works are above. I'm not privy to that information, but I know that is a concern.
And refers to nonprofit, correct? Do you only use nonprofit, like that you refer to?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. We just have, however the contracts are made up, we have nursing services in all of the areas, and PSW, any kind of the service providers, and it's contracted out. So when we send out an offer, it goes to a particular service provider. That's how it works. And if they didn't have the staff or whatever, people end up going on wait lists. Hopefully it is prioritized according to what the patient needs. But as a lot of people are upset right now with wait listing, because again, we feel that we should have the service when we need it, but it is being worked on.
Since the floor is open, does anybody else have a question for the panel?
was wondering if any of the panelists have seen emerging trends in the past couple years in terms of certain services or topics coming up more often, and you know what you were hearing about the most often from people, if there were any trends in that.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, please.
Definitely, I think what we're hearing, a lot more mental health needs, and across the spectrum. With the family centers, we do service a lot of families with younger children, but that doesn't mean that we don't have, I can think of one example in particular, a man in his 50s walked in a door and asked for help. And that was something a little bit new, but so I think we're definitely seeing a rise in the need for mental health, and I believe our partners who are providing services really are stepping up and trying to support that through the talking clinics and things like that.
Mental health, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's both in the younger stages as well as the seniors. There's a big gap in what's available to all those people at this point. We need to start filling in the gaps at some point with, hopefully, with more services and things like that. But there's a big gap with that.
I have a question. Are there any tricks of the trade you want to share with the people that are here right now? Is there anything that you think, oh wow, I'm glad I found that and I'd like to share that? Is there anything you can share
in terms of mental
that's
health?
Generally in INR? Could be mental health. That seems to be the theme of the day.
One thing that the library, we try to teach our staff is you don't have to have the answer right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't have to say, no, I can't help you. You can say, I don't have the information now, but I can get back to you. And that's the follow-up is important.
Yeah.
So we can't know everything all the time. Right.
I think that's a good tip, to get comfortable with being able to say that. And one thing that we've learned is it actually kind of sometimes can bring comfort to the person that you're talking to, because here's somebody in a position of authority, so to speak, who doesn't necessarily have the answer right at their fingertips either. So I think it is a bit of a comfort both ways.
And I guess, and again, listening and being respectful, because I was thinking of a story, like backing up a few questions, where it's a friend actually who ended up being homeless for 10 years, but he reached out for help when he was in his 20s, and because of kind of the reaction he got at the end of the phone and kind of, cold and standoffish, he didn't try again for 10 years. So I think, we've talked a little bit about mental health. Acknowledging how much courage it takes for people to ask for help is really important. So honoring that, and there's a lot of mention of that in Big White Wall, is really praising people for having the courage to ask for help and acknowledging that. And even if you're on your 150th call, to know that this might have taken this person years to summon up the courage to call. So always being mindful of that, I think, is really important in all of our jobs, is not to go on autopilot and just whatever respond, even if you feel like that and you're exhausted, knowing that might be that person's only chance. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I find that good customer service goes a long way, whether you're in retail or you're an agency. We do training pretty repetitively in my organization to ensure that people are having those excellent listening skills and being comfortable to say, I don't know that, but I'll get back to you. And those are all the things that we use for. So I think that's sort of a key component. You put yourself in that person's shoes, try to think like, what kind of help would I want?
Most definitely. I think this is almost the last question, unless another one comes from the audience. Can I assume you're all heavy users of the Healthline?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, imagine 5 years from now, what's changed or what's new or what could it offer that it's not offering now? Pick your favorite question. What would you like, or what do you imagine happening in 5 years on the Healthline? It's perfect right now.
Oh, yeah.
I can offer some sort of way to get clinical pathways or algorithms in, because I think it's, and we're all trying to do sort of think about how that would work. But some way so that it could not just list things, but offer sort of what the pathways were. So, and I think people do that manually, or they do it through how they understand things when they're working in an INR system. So it's like you have the wonderful information, the health line, but you're sort of thinking, okay, they need this, this, and this. You're thinking of the path yourself and bringing it up. So I don't know how.
It's like the pathway's mapped out for you already.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you put in a couple of things, and then it follows, gives you
almost
that
like artificial intelligence
exactly.
kind of thing.
But that would take artificial intelligence. So I just think that was.
Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
I would like it to be more, in 5 years from now, every citizen knows about the health line. So it's not just service providers who know about it. Like, seriously, if my aunt or uncle needs help, they know I can look here, and somewhere in that big massive database I'm going to find the help I need, or I can find someone who can help me find that help. So I think we need advertising, lots of advertising.
I second that one, especially with professionals. They still don't know about it. Doctors' offices, all kinds of people out there still don't know it. It needs to get out there more in a broader situation, and people need to know about it more so that yeah.
I told a whole library conference.
Patient care could be so much more personal and done more personally by having it in the moment. Then everybody keeps sending it to that one, to that one, to that one, because nobody knows what each other does. And the patient waits until it gets to the person that's right. And I just believe in better patient care with that kind of, and communication, getting it out there is going to make it a lot better.
Yeah, another question over here.
I think I can do it with a microphone, but I'll hold it.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I guess it's for the live stream. With the long wait lists that there are for services today, and I can understand that must be discouraging for people that are coming to receive services, and difficult for you guys when you're telling people, this support is there, but it's a 4-year wait list or a 6-month wait list. What advice do you give to kind of both sides of things? A, to the patient or to the individual who wants those supports when there's a long wait list, and B, to someone else who might encounter that member of the public that needs those supports, but there's such a long wait list. What kind of advice would you give to kind of bridge that gap, or to help them not feel completely helpless in the system?
It's a really good question. And Sue back there is looking a little thinking about it, but I think the strategy that we tend to take is finding other things that are available to support them in the meantime. The first example that comes to my mind is Tyke Talk, and they do have a bit of a wait list, but they also have some resources available on their website to help parents in the interim. And so I think looking at that, what else can we do in the meantime? I mean, if we could just wave our magic wand and get that wait list reduced, that would be fantastic, but that's not going to happen.
And it's making sure when they are on a wait list that they're given those other options. And there are other options as far as our business is concerned. There's other options offered. So if it's a wait list for personal support work, then there are private pay to go with, or other options of people if they're trying to stay at home, but you can't stay at home, you might have to go to a retirement home. There's just making sure that they know the other options until what they sort of want, if that happens, the need can be met. So it's just making sure you can link them the best you can. It's not always the best thing because people don't always want to hear that, but I think the best thing is always making sure you have something for them to work with. It's not just, sorry, I can't provide you that service, you're on a wait list, see you tomorrow, call in later, but it's all about, these are your options now. I'll leave that with you and let them work with it and give them the resources to work with those resources outside, and we work with what we have inside.
I'm going to put in a plug for the Healthline because it has a lot of good like self-help groups and community services and things that you don't have to pay for. There aren't wait lists. And I sometimes encourage people to talk to their MPPs. if it really does feel like this is not acceptable, that empower them with, you go and talk to your MPP and tell them it's unacceptable, because they have to act, and if they get 1,000 complaints from people about a particular service, like there was the hip, that whole issue with hip replacement, there was a lot of pressure that was brought to bear, and they had to change things. So I think you always try to give people that option too. So.
And I was going to say, we almost have to do extracurricular work. For instance, with autism is a huge issue right now. Wait lists are crazy long, and it's very discouraging for parents. So, as someone involved with autism, I know of a lot of parental support groups on Facebook or other in social media. So even just reading what other people are going through sometimes, and you can join groups. So that wouldn't be official referrals, but it's something that, if you have a certain passion, that's something you can develop on your own.
We're almost out of time, so I just thought I'd ask if there's one last question hiding out there before we close. Oh, there is one last one. Go ahead. This is the very last one.
You've talked about telling people that you don't know the answer right now, but you'll get back to them. I'm just wondering what that get back to them looks like in practice. So how do you follow up with people that you've provided information and referrals to?
For community connectors, it really depends on the person that you're working with. Often they are, somebody who's coming to a play group, coming to the family center regularly. So it might be, are you coming back this week? Let's check in at that point. It can be taking a phone number, an email, whatever works best in that situation. Mm-hmm. There is definite intent that we talk about amongst the connectors to actually follow through. So making sure that it doesn't slip. If, for instance, somebody's going to be off for a vacation, they make sure they follow up with their other staff members. So there's always somebody, and make that introduction, I guess, to the person that's receiving the referral. So really, it's working with the individual.
I agree with that. And then sometimes it just, can I put you on hold? I'm going to ask a colleague. Sometimes it's as basic as that. But,
So it's a phone call back. It could be email. It could be mail out. Things like that. Hold again. Ask and get the information for them right away if you can. If you can't, it can be a phone call back. I always feel that people are more confident in you if you can say, no, I don't know, but I'll give you a call back. And they're always waiting for the call, and they're happy to hear you back and giving them the information.
Great. Well, thank you very much, panelists. To close, I think it's appropriate to circle back to mental health and addictions. We all know that mental health is getting a lot of attention in Ontario. In the last decade, mental health visits to emergency rooms have jumped significantly, as have hospitalizations for depression, anxiety, and eating disorders. Many would agree that more work needs to be done to intervene before people end up in the ER in crisis. People like these people up here help, and like Harriet as well. So there's a lot of great work being done to connect people with supports in their community for mental health and addictions and services. So that's great, and so thank you for that work, and thank you, guests, for coming. Et merci d'avoir bravé le froid et la neige et le mauvais temps. Thank you for, how do you say it, braving the snow and the cold and coming out today. That's it for the event. Thank you very much.